Hello, everybody. Welcome to Into the Call podcast with myself, Linda. It is a roundtable edition. Of course, I had to do it. We've been having this edition since July of this year. I'm just really excited, really stoked for the panel that we have right now. I, for one, am just beaming with pride for everybody who is here and all the magic that they've been making. And I'm just happy to share this journey with you and share their insights with you, because everything that we do is to elevate our businesses, our spaces, and what we're doing and how we can actually really carry on the business of fashion. And right now we're going to talk about the responsible way. But before we get started, we got to get into the core.
Into the core.
Get into it.
All good things in Africa and beyond. Into the core.
Get into it.
Into the core. All good things in Africa and beyond.
All good things in Africa and beyond, and that's exactly what it is. It's happening right here, right now, and we're talking about the Roundtable Talks, brought to you by the Core Fashion Kenya, which also is a producer of Into the Core podcast. So umbrella upon umbrella, and hey, this is how it happens. My guest today, I'm really excited. Let's start with Lisa Kibutu, founder of ReFace. Regenerative fashion, just so many beautiful amplifying things that she's doing. We're going to hear from her. Michael Stanley Jones, oh my God, he was a former secretary of the UN Alliance to Sustainable Fashion. He is going to tell you his very long what he's doing right now, but I think what he's doing is so special, and it's really going to challenge how we think about responsible fashion and what we should be doing into the future. And I want to say, Ria from Lilabare, oh my God, I've wanted to grasp her for such a long time. It's ridiculous. So thank you for even giving us a little bit of your time. She's here for a very short stint, so I'm also going to start my questions with her. No pun intended to anybody. And then also Zara Muthama, who is just a pioneer within sustainable fashion and what that means. I mean, like, I feel like you're so passionate about it, and I can't wait to hear and learn more about what this responsible side of fashion looks like. I want to say a huge thank you to my sponsors, Skyward Express, Paystack, FedEx, New Faces, New Voices. These are people who are amplifying our voices and making sure that we have a space and a time to talk about what we're doing. I also have a really beautiful giveaway tonight. So to one of my favorite spots, About Time, I've got dinner for two. Okay, that's up to you, listeners. So I always like to give something away. Sorry, this time it's not an airline ticket, but it's going to be good food, and you're going to be very happy about it. So we're going to start. I want everybody to give a very small, brief introduction of what you do, just considering time and time management based on Ria, because she's got a hard stop at 7:05. We'll start with you, Lisa.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Lisa Kibutu with ReFace, which is the Regenerative Fashion Collaborative Exchange. And just as it says, we are collaborative with several aspects of the entire textile value chain, from smallholder farmers all the way to recyclers, and in between with retailers. So we work strictly with sustainable fashion, or more regenerative, and there's a distinction, and I'll explain later on why we make it. And then we just launched our institute, which is a Regenerative Fashion Institute, Regenerative Textile Development Institute with Pani University in Kilifi.
Well done. Congratulations, Michael.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Linda. I'm Michael Stanley Jones. I formerly served in the United Nations Environment Program, based in Nairobi for 8 years. And during that time, I was asked to inaugurate and serve as the first secretary and chair of the UN Alliance for Sustainable Fashion. So we launched that in 2019 with the help of 200 fashion professionals from around the world. And we really were deeply involved with the Kenyan community during that launch. The UN Alliance consisted, or still consists of 8 separate UN agencies that work and contribute to fashion and sustainability. Currently, I'm a environmental policy and governance fellow with the United Nations University Institute for Water, Environment and Health based in Ontario, Canada. And I also serve as senior advisor to the Circular Research Foundation in Parabita, Italy. With CRF, the Circular Research Foundation, we've put together a coalition of organizations from Egypt, Turkey, Greece, and Italy that are promoting plastic-free Mediterranean Sea initiative, which is an initiative that tries to get plastic out of the sea. And one way of doing that is to get synthetic fiber out of the clothes we wear.
That's absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much. And that's a challenge. We're going to come into that in real. Let's talk to Zara. Welcome yourself, please.
Hi, everyone. My name is Zara Muthama. I'm a sustainable fashion advocate and practitioner from Nairobi. My work is based around circular fashion, sustainable materials, kind of what Linda said, a whole umbrella of things. So yeah, I'm happy to be here and see some familiar faces. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Ria, please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ria, and I'm the founder and creative director of Lilabare. Lilabare is a regenerative and circular fashion brand based in Kenya, where we work from farm to finish with hyper-local and natural materials, artisanal groups across the country, and bring together different identities, multicultural identities that exist in Kenya through our work. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
You're most welcome, Ria. So guys, I'm not shunning you out, but I'm just gonna basically start with Ria just because she's got a really short time and I just want to see how much we can engage with her while she's here. So I came to your beautiful pop-up. I don't know. I'm wearing your product right now, and I feel very proud about wearing it. Beautiful of your essentials, Bear, and I absolutely love it. So congratulations, first of all. I want you to walk us briefly about how you have managed to and why you're so sustainable. Your brand is probably one of my favorites. Sorry, no pun intended to anybody else, but you're probably one of my favorites. And I think Lisa would feel the same way. Zara, probably so, but yeah, 100%. But we feel very strongly about you because it's probably because of how you brought your brand about and how you have factored so many things in. You've factored, environment responsibility, you've factored social responsibility, you've covered consumer awareness. You're telling us all about how it's done. You're very innovative in every aspect of how I look at you. And so I feel like you are part of why fashion has to be responsible. Talk to me a little bit about why responsible fashion and how Lilabare covers that sector. And yes, let's just start with that.
Well, thank you so much for the kind words. It's so lovely to hear. Yeah, I mean, I think my experience and the reason I went into fashion in the first place, I always knew that I was interested in design and I wanted to practice design and use that as part of my artistic expression as a creative individual. And I started working, and my first job was a summer I spent in the EPZ, the Export Processing Zone, when I was 13 years old, where they did the outsourcing of Tommy Hilfiger and Ralph Lauren, right? And the purpose for this was, it was the start of my journey to go and understand every single aspect of the fashion industry, how factories and seamstresses and artisan groups and designer houses operate, so that I can be informed and create something that positively contributes to the narrative. And in my research and work experience, in fact, my dissertation for university was entitled "Is Green the New Black?" because I just noticed that everybody seems to be doing beautiful work and creating beautiful fashion at the expense of so many other things that just didn't make sense. Fashion employs a vast and a very significant portion of the world. The last statistic I read was 1/3 of the world is employed by the fashion industry in some way, shape, or form. That's textiles and apparel. How many people are affected by the way in which we make clothes? And then thinking about us as wearers of clothes, most people in the world wear clothes every day. And how is it that we're, the question that I kept coming back to is, why are we doing it in a way that is harmful to people and the planet, and is exploitative in nature and just profit driven, when it can be so much more, and it can be an empowering tool and platform and channel for all kinds of people in all walks of life that inevitably come together in the making and the wearing of clothes. So yeah, it's been a deep philosophical question for me for a long time, and I think the creation of Lilabare is paying homage to that in some way.
I really love that response. I want to throw this to Michael right now, because I want Michael to come back. He had told me some amazing stuff, a challenge to designers. And Michael, is it possible that you could actually explain a little bit of how you were saying that, especially with responsible fashion, sustainable fashion, there was something that you had mentioned about how we really, like, the challenge should be to work with cottons that would, and I just want you to carry that conversation on, and maybe give a little bit of premise to it.
Thank you. I wouldn't limit it to cotton, but I would talk about sustainable materials, and particularly the fiber that comes off of the clothes we wear. We need to be responsible for the pollution that's associated with the clothing that we make and the clothes that we wear. And there are some things that I think are obvious that need to be done. If we are using automated washing machines for our clothing, we need to have microfiber filters installed on them to pull off that lint, which is basically plastic pollution that goes directly into water channels, into the sea, into marine life, but also ends up in us. And not only because we eat fish or shellfish or other marine organisms, but there are microfibers floating in the atmosphere that are coming off of our clothing, which we inhale, we ingest, and they carry very, very harmful pollutants. They act as microscopic sponges. So microfiber pollution, microplastic pollution, nanoplastic pollution. What in the heck are nanoplastics? That's plastics that are so small that they can cross between the membranes of our cells. And we're finding them in all of our organisms now, all of our organs. So in testes, in blood, and on and on and on. This is an alarming development that is the consequence of us choosing 25, 35, 45 years ago to start making fabric out of synthetic materials derived from oil and from petroleum. So we're talking mainly about polyester, which is now, or different numbers, different times, but between 57 and 66% of the global textile market is fiber made from polyester. And also nylon could be mentioned there. So these are material questions, and responsibility starts with us deciding that we're only going to make clothes that are sustainable, that can degrade naturally, that will not become pollutants and threats to the health of the planet and threats to human health. So that's one dimension. I can mention that I am not a fashion designer or a producer of fashion, but I am an advocate for poverty environment nexus, which means we should address deep pockets of poverty in the world, and we should do that by caring for the environment, because the environment provides the wealth of the planet. And the poorest people on the planet are those who are most dependent on having healthy natural resources, sustainability. And so Poverty Environment Initiative, which I worked for 8 years in one form or another during my stay in Nairobi, was aimed at bringing that nexus forward so decision makers would care for how environmental management impacted poverty rates and society, the social dimension. I apply that same ethos to fashion. In order to be responsible, to create sustainability in the fashion sector, we need to care about the social impacts, including the health impacts of how that industry influences human health and the natural environment. And to do that, there are, I stopped there.
No, I was going to say, we need to come back to that a little bit later on. I was going to say, in terms of where you see, and I want maybe Lisa to come in with Lilabare. I only know this because she's time conscious and she's going to leave us in a few, and we can all just carry on as we were. But Lisa, I want to know exactly, like, in terms of how, and sorry, Michael, I didn't mean to cut you off abruptly, but we could go very deep into it. I was just trying to give time for Lisa to have a little bit comment on Lilabare, and then maybe just to understand, like, why her brand is so important, especially when it comes to responsible fashion, and how that's impacting us with what you're doing. And I'm going to ask you to keep it very short and brief, because I really want her to respond to what Michael has said and to what you have said, and also to what Zara will say.
Yeah, okay, first and foremost, I mean, Michael completely speaks my language. I mean, he understands that this, that fashion starts from the soil up. And, you know, that's why for us, yarn is so important, and the type of fibers that we're bringing into the fashion industry for textiles, that they have to be completely regenerative. I mean, if it's not healing the earth, it's hurting it, right? And coming to Lilabare, of course, Lilabare is my poster child of regenerative fashion. I use her on several platforms because Ria's ethos and the way she practices fashion is so conscious and so ethical, and she does pay attention to where it comes from. I mean, so like when we're talking about fashion being traceable and transparent, I mean, this is the brand. This is the poster child of transparency, traceability, what Michael was talking about, the environment nexus, especially very conscious about the artisanal communities around the creativity, not the natural dyeing systems. I mean, she really goes out of her way to figure this out and to use it. And to try and make it affordable, which, you know, as you know, the fossil fuel industry is trying to say that regenerative, textile regenerative fashion, I would never use the word sustainable, by the way, it's too greenwashed. And why it is so, and why they try to say why it's expensive, but I think she's going to continue to prove that this is an affordable way of doing things. And just because you are paying people fair wages and you're taking care of their health and well-being, that is an expensive option, and it really is not.
What about you, Zara? Because then I want to give her opportunity to even respond to the three of you lovely guests. Thank you so much, Lisa.
Sorry. Yeah, I couldn't agree with what everyone has said, especially echoing on what Lisa just said. I think Ria really kind of is. When I was first getting into this industry, I feel like the way Ria was doing business wasn't the way that people's business models and kind of their ethos and everything was guiding them. And she's literally proving that you're really able to work. I mean, from the ground up. I love the soil up, but really also from the ground up as well, because she's using artisans, she's using all of these kinds of like tapping into, I think, every possible resource she could within the Kenyan landscape, and just really going for it. So I also think that's quite interesting, because I think that everyone today probably feels like there's only probably one model to go with when you're starting up your fashion brand. But I think there's more diverse models. And honestly, for me, I think you end up with something quite unique, I would say. I think, and that's why it's like we can say she's our favorite, because maybe it's our personal preference and taste. But I honestly think that you couldn't compare like her stuff with anything else that's out there, being kind of like mass manufactured and like being commercially sold. So I also just really think that um, when you have a strong ethos, then the work really like just speaks for itself. Because for me, I'm like, and I know we all say it's expensive, but I think we have to come back to this thing of like normalizing certain prices for certain things. I'm like, if I only think that that conversation comes into play when we're talking about clothes that cost £2 and £5, that's when like, of course, something that costs £200 might seem insane, but I'm like, that has really been shoved down our throat. I almost feel to the point that as consumers, we don't recognize it. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I really think that Ria has like such an amazing blueprint that she's doing, and her brand didn't even exist, I think, when I started out. And I'm like now seeing it and just seeing it at Lagos Fashion Week and just seeing it in all of these spaces that it deserves to be in and recognized in is really amazing and lovely.
Yeah. I want to ask you a question, and I really want Ria, if you could just get into depth with this. Some of the stuff that you showcased at your pop-up with the use of banana material for me was just so liberating, because I've seen it done in different spaces, and you and I jumped into it. We're like, yeah, India has already got it, but I know how important all of this is to your brand. I just want you to have the space to respond to that aspect. That would be my question, but make it the final. But respond to what Michael was talking about, Lisa and Zara was speaking. And I think that gives you an opportunity to actually have the time, at least give us your time for now. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's it's a really interesting moment for me to be witnessing and listening to this conversation, thinking back to when I first started out Lilabare. And back then, nobody even used the word sustainable. It was before the hype and the build of the use of that word even. It was so early on. Well, it wasn't. It was 7 years ago, but 7, 8 years ago, people would be like, what is sustainable fashion? Like, what is that? Right. So I just want to take this moment to recognize that there's different players that have entered the chat, pun intended, right? And that is on all the different levels, whether it's on a policy level, whether it's on a manufacturing and research and development level, whether it's on an conversation, communication, advocacy level. There's been so much growth in the industry and a shift in what really is considered acceptable practices of fashion, right? I do believe that as much as I'm perfectly happy being the odd one out in the room, and I'm quite used to people thinking I'm a little bit insane until we move to the next phase, but that's what disruptors end up doing. I hope that through the practice of what I believe is a philosophy in which if the world produced clothes with that in mind, not only would we have we would eliminate all of our issues with the toxic waste and the byproducts of bad materials, but we would radically shift the entire landscape of the fashion industry. And, this is something that Zara touched on, like the $20 or the $2 versus the $200 or pounds, right? The clothing, the way that we see that. I think that my journey so far has taken me through a process of understanding, yes, there are certain things that are going to be more expensive because we're not squeezing anybody. But at the same time, how do we create and design things that are purposeful, meaningful, timeless, and therefore, and so durable, of course, because they're built to last, but then, they're relevant in somebody's wardrobe in 50 years from now. This is the way that we all, as human society, I believe, should be thinking about clothing and fashion. And the exploration of that and the expression in Lilabare carries through, the big thing that I've always been interested in, and up until recently hasn't been within my reach, but I'm so glad, Linda, you mentioned, but this is radical alternative textiles. Going back to Michael's point about nanoplastics and all the microplastics, which I spoke to a space engineer recently who told me that they've just discovered huge amounts of nanoplastics and microplastics in space emanating from the Earth. So it is really a huge problem. We could talk about that, but for me, I think, there are solutions, and those solutions exist in front of us already, right? Like Lisa is doing great work in terms of development and supporting designers and manufacturers and getting this off the ground where we can start to really tap into the potential of, the naturally abundant resources that we have to use as textiles. And in the meantime, it's been such a joy to work with banana fiber collectors and my hand loomers. I'm actually wearing our banana jacket right now. I'm testing it for thermosensitivity, and it's really incredible that we have, we do have the ability without machinery, without carbon, without chemicals, to create durable and long-lasting textiles, even from banana waste, even at the stage that we are in right now. I believe that in the conversation around fashion production in Kenya and Africa at large, there's always the concern of things like scalability, affordability. This is a conversation that's come up with, for example, Nigerian designers today, which I saw in the news that, people are questioning in those spaces of Africa as well, where there's a huge appetite for fashion. And I think this is also where brands who like Lilabare, and this is what I've been working on recently, is let's make the right kind of fashion that's made the right way, right? We've got the rain-fed cotton and it's localized supply chain, and let's make that accessible to more people. And it's so great to see you, Linda, wearing the t-shirt, the Bear by Lilabare t-shirt, because this is exactly what this conversation is that I'm getting at is yes, we have our radical alternative textiles and we can make incredible statement blazers that will take you through for 50 years and longer. And also what you need right now is you need a classic, well-cut, well-made, durable, breathable, soft, locally made t-shirt, pant, whatever it is, your basics. And this is why it's been so important to me to release a line that's actually affordable, and it costs what a t-shirt should cost if it's made the right way. So to give everybody who hasn't seen Bear by Lilabare, because we just launched a week ago, to give you context, our t-shirts, we retail those for 3,490 shillings. And our highest, most expensive piece in the line is a pair of wide leg pants, which retail for 8,990 Kenya shillings. So we're looking at a price point of $29 US to $80. This is what your basics should be costing. So, you know, if we're doing it in the sense that no, we're not using those blends, those terrible fabrics for the environment. If you're doing it with the rain-fed cotton, naturally grown, we have some artisanal touches on there. And yeah, again, I think that, you know, the development of the history of where we've gone from a brand that started off pushing the boundaries of artisan making, and we continue to do that, and we continue to push our artisans in hand looming, in printing, in beadwork, but we also now getting to that point in the Kenyan landscape specifically where I think we have enough of a voice as a creative sector in this country to say this is who we are. And it all boils down to the essence of what we're talking about. To me, like the t-shirt is the universal garment, right? So if we can start from there and start putting that out there, that's done the right way, this is now the next phase of how we get the entire country, the entire region to start wearing things that are made from here. And so, yeah, I'm really glad that we've been showing at Lagos Fashion Week and, have a trunk show with Moda Operandi. And those things are really special. I would say, though, it's, the community that surrounds me at home here, these are the most important people to me to service. If I can't do that as a designer, if we can't all get there as an industry to service our local community, then we still have work to do, right? So I think that's a huge step in the right direction. And we're all on the same page with this. I'm just so grateful to see so many people from within the fashion sector and across all the different kinds of aspects and layers and elements to it, that we're all, participating in this shift. So I do feel like it's a group effort, and it's a huge time for Kenya, for East Africa right now. We're really, I think, pioneering a whole new way of innovating clothes and making and wearing clothes that make sense for the planet and make sense for the people who have access to them. Yeah, so that's my big speech in response to all of you guys. I feel like it's a big group high five. I think everybody is doing fantastic work, and we need to keep the momentum going for sure.
And, thank you so much, Ria, because I was just going to say that one of the most impactful things that when I spoke to Michael, it was like maybe a month and a half ago, but just recently. One of the things when I was thinking about the Diani edition, so many people came into play, but it was just very few. And it's the people who are sitting here. And I was like, okay, so this Diani edition, and Michael, we're going to talk about this when we go into the next section. And Ria, you're going to catch into that, because it's going to be the conversations that we're all going to have when we have it in March. And so the dates are the 21st. So if anybody's listening in, start planning your money bags so that you can come and really participate and really speak to the people who are within the local community and make an impact, and allow them to understand why it's so necessary to push our fashion brands, how responsible we are, how we need to tell our real stories. The days of choreo, great, we love it, but gone. We need to amplify what is happening within society. The courier stores cannot tell the stories of where they're getting their couriers. So how do we amplify that, and how do we also support them? We're not trying to remove them from the industry. We're trying to also amplify their story. There's got to be a way of doing that. But so everyone can look forward to March. Ria is going to be working with me. I think, we're partnering together to make sure that we have something beautiful. So is Lisa, who is going to be on that side, just also making sure and partnering with us just to make sure that we have the right conversations and the right connections. And I don't know, Lisa's like, really? Did you sign me up for that? Yeah, Lisa is in this. And as long as we're all together trying to make a difference, that is what is important. So I just wanted to say, anyone, Ria is going to be around for us, and we're working together and we're collaborating. And so is Lisa, and so is Zara. And hopefully we can get some beautiful guidance with Michael on board and the partners that he has wherever. Yeah. So Leah, Ria, if you can stay a little bit longer, that would be great. But if you don't have to, then you can bid yourself adieu.
I can give 5 more minutes for sure, because I'm enjoying the conversation. So yeah, I can do another 5.
Oh, great. So then maybe let me cut into Zara and just kind of get a little bit of a when you're looking at our industry right now and you're looking at what responsible fashion is, what are some of the discrepancies that you're seeing, where people are calling their brands sustainable brands, but where are you seeing, as somebody who has a stance, and I know that this came up with our last roundtable talk, so I really want you to actually put yourself on the table and say, hey, this is what I think, and this is what I really want people to really plaster in and understand about what responsible fashion looks like. You're a passionate person, you're quietly spoken, but you're very impactful, and we all know that.
Yeah, thank you for
Your
that,
say.
Yeah, so I would say that honestly, how I really, and I'm kind of with, I think everyone here is tired of the word sustainability, but just for this purpose, I think when we talk about sustainability, what I really like to feel that it's something that we're still trying to define. So I feel like nothing is really set in stone, but I will say a lot of people kind of get like the last thing that we had at the talks was about sustainable and ethical, and how I feel those are two different things. Though at some point they do kind of cross over, I ultimately think that those are kind of two different discussions. Because when we're talking about sustainable fibers, for example, and we're talking about something being ethically made, you can see how those are two very quite distinct things. And then there's also circularity, which I think also plays quite an interesting role in that. Um, Circularity is my most, I think, controversial aspect of sustainability, I will say as well, because we're being forced to kind of deal with a waste crisis that we have not, that we didn't start. So I also think there's a lot of gray area when it comes to that. I was recently in Ghana, and yeah, I guess maybe sometimes you don't feel like something is that big of an issue, but I mean, to be honest, Gikomba is probably one of the biggest secondhand markets in the whole of Africa at the end of the day. So the crisis, the waste crisis itself is very much here. But yeah, in as much as, again, I'm saying it is sustainable to deal with the waste crisis, I also don't think that we can kind of upcycle our way out of this crisis. I think the pressure is so immense and detrimental to all of us, honestly. I mean, on the continent, but even I feel like the world has become so global right now that I feel Westerners would actually go to Gikomba to buy product, to buy secondhand from there. And ultimately it's just like a continuous cycle of I don't really know what I can say to describe that kind of waste crisis and situation. But yeah, that also is kind of something that sort of kind of falls into the umbrella of sustainability and regenerative, as Lisa has said as well. So I think there are a lot of things that kind of are underneath the umbrella of it. But I guess it's what I feel people really struggle with is the definition of things. So it's when we're talking about sustainable materials, what are we really talking about? We has talked about rain-fed cotton and things like that. I think she mentioned banana fibers as well. So even with that, again, it's that bananas are being used so that we can kind of create a zero waste situation. So the impact that's what I'm really trying to like explain in all of this. It's just the impact of like, or the extent of the degree of which sustainability does occur is quite different. But yeah, I think mainly for me, the term is when it's sustainable, there's a focus on the planet. And when it's ethical, it's more a focus on people. But ultimately, sustainability is about both people and planet, you know? So yeah, I don't know if that's a good enough explanation. It really takes me
Very
around.
interesting. I would love to
Yeah.
I would love to have a take from like either Lisa or Michael. Just jump in wherever you are. It's a roundtable, so feel free to chime in. You know,
Yeah, I'd like to quickly just talk about going back actually to what Michael was talking about the microfibers, the plastics in the air, and really like why. I mean, and I hope that this will just close the definition on this with this sustainability thing. If anything that is fossil fuel can call itself sustainable, and because it cannot call itself regenerative, right? A fossil fuel fabric cannot call itself regenerative. It cannot call itself sustainable because you can recycle it. But it does not belong on human skin, and it does not belong in our washing machines. It does not belong in our water systems. It does not belong in our food system. So to have fossil fuel, any shape or form of fossil fuel floating in space is completely unacceptable. I mean, it's not only unacceptable, it makes us ill, right? The planet is going to survive this. So the planet will rejuvenate and regenerate. But will humans be able to survive this? And so what we're fighting for and what we're trying to play a part in and do our part in is human survival for the next generation and generations to come. This is what this regenerative movement is about. It's sort of regeneration is not a thing to do. It's a way of being. It's a way of life that was left to us by our ancestors who were already creating these things, but they left these plants. I mean, just think about the number of people who had died for them to say, you know, like there's so many plants that are from underground that are highly poisonous. So how many people died until they said, oh, the potato is the one that we're going to go with, or yeah, or you know, the carrot is the thing. You know what I mean? So they've already left us this blueprint, and yet we still want to go invent new foods that are making us sicker. So, and we're like now when we're creating cotton alternative fibers, and that's why I like that Michael pointed out it's not just about cotton fiber. So when we're creating and developing cotton alternative fibers with the plants that are already existing, especially indigenous plants that are rain-fed, that do not need fertilizers, that do not need chemicals. This is the way to take fashion and textiles. It's actually what our ancestors did. They found what was already on the land and they went for the lowest hanging of fruits, isn't it? So why haven't we been able to advance ourselves from there? Like what I feel that we've done is we've reversed ourselves to if we're not healing the planet and now we're harming it, we're using extraction, extractive industries to produce clothing when everything is already growing around us. I think that is I don't know. I think Michael, just take it from here because yeah, I think in a way.
Well, I really appreciated you bringing in regenerative concept, regenerative agriculture. I like the whole approach of talking about soils to salad bar, if you will, you know, to farm to table. Because if we don't understand the entire cycle of how fabric is produced, who produces it, how its production impacts the environment, the ecology of it, then we can't really get to those questions about is it sustainable, is it ethical, is it circular? I absolutely agree. Circularity is a concept that has been captured by petroleum companies and the states that represent them There is currently, as we speak, a global negotiation on a plastics treaty that is debating in South Korea this week whether there should be curbs on production of plastic. And those curbs, if they were adopted, theoretically, they could impact the textile sector because textiles make up such a large share of the plastic pollution that the planet suffers from. And the argument of, well, we can recycle plastic. We don't need to address its production. We don't need to curb production. We can continue to drill, baby, drill oil, petroleum, and refine it into synthetic materials because we can just capture that in a recycle. That is a pipe dream. I mean, that is BS with capital letters on both. And the reason it is that we've heard this story for 40 years, and 1% of plastics that are produced are recycled currently. We are so far away from having any reasonable system of recycling that is, I think, throwing your hands up in the air and providing a hopeless solution. The only solution is this: if we switch consciously to sustainable fibers, one that are made through regenerative processes, and ones that, if we address circularity without the pipe dream of recycling, we actually have a good set of concepts, closing the loop, and not introducing into our products things that are toxic and that will pollute the environment and harm human health and marine life. So I love all of this discussion. Regeneration, sustainability, yes, it's a concept that has been somewhat corrupted because it's been married to unsustainable practices. There is a serious problem with greenwashing. The European Union has just adopted regulations to control greenwashing. You are not allowed to say something sustainable in the EU if you are violating some very basic principles of sustainability. I'll stop there.
Yeah, I mean, Michael, and I'm so glad you touched on this with the EU, because going back to what Zara had said, right, that we're still trying to define sustainability. I think the way that I see it is sustainability is a very vague umbrella term. But what needs to happen is we need to be specific. There's a reason that I'll tell you that it's rain-fed cotton, and you can ask me why it's more sustainable to have rain-fed cotton, and I'll give you the answer. But as long as we can be specific and be deliberate and intentional, you can't just say it's sustainable anymore because of, there have been so many people who have capitalized on this word and tried to play the heartstrings of not customers, consumers in their eyes. I think, there's a difference with how certain brands will see the people that buy their clothes versus the way I do. But in that sense, they're just numbers, they're consumers, it's mass volume, it's mass market. So we need to get into a space, and this is where I think it's really great to see us shifting, that let's be specific about what we mean when we say we're sustainable, rather than saying we're sustainable. And in doing so, we can not only educate and create awareness of what it means to actually be sustainable, but you give the customer or the audience the actual answer that they're looking for. Right off the bat, you're transparent. And that is also another huge factor in, what does it mean to be responsible in fashion? You have to own your choices and those decisions and the creations you put out into the world. And if that's the case, then you've got to label it. And just to say this, and this is probably, this is a big question I think I have for everybody. As much as I'm focused on the solution-driven thinking and finding innovative ways to create clothing, Zara also touched on a very important topic, which is, how we are dealing with the waste crisis and the waste colonization issue that we're facing all over Africa. In Kenya specifically is a huge, huge problem. Now, I'm interested in hearing everybody's answers. I'm going to have to jump onto the recording to find out. But I did have a question, and I hope you don't mind, Linda, just kind of wanting to see everyone's opinion on this, that, with the secondhand market, we have a huge waste crisis. And yes, we don't have the technology that exists yet to actually effectively transform this into something else, particularly in this part of the world. I have been floating and discussing and kind of sharing with peers this idea for us to be able to grade clothing and group clothing and categorize clothing. And again, this goes back to being specific about what we mean. Now, if there was a system in Kenya that existed for the secondhand market to say we've got grade A, which is 100% natural fibers, and then we've got grade B, which is your poly blends and a mix, and then you've got grade C, which is your complete synthetics, some kind of simplified system. Does this group think that that would be an effective way to kind of eliminate or at least reduce the waste crisis? Because as much as it's not an upcycling game at this point, if I know that the only thing that we're getting from the secondhand importations is natural fibers, we can actually do something with that. And Lisa as well, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, the processing and the, decomposing and reinventing of that fiber then becomes that much more simplified. So I'm very curious to know, and it was this specific group of people that I wanted to kind of bring this up with, of like, as much as we're, growing in the creation of clothes that are ethically made and regenerative and natural fibers and rain-fed and radical alternative, we've got so much promise, artisanally made, so many different layers to this system, but we also do have to address the problems that we're facing. And I think this is a big one that I think we need to come up with a solution that, again, enables all of us in the room and all of us on the roundtable to really push to the next kind of phase of fashion production in Kenya.
Okay, I can speak a little bit to that with our EPR. I'm part of the task force that has been put together to do the EPR on textiles. I'm actually benchmarking the new California EPR law that just came into play. It is one of the strongest laws in the world. It actually beats Sweden, that was the first textile EPR.
That's extended producer responsibility for our audience. EPR.
Okay, sorry. Yeah. Yeah, so the extended producer responsibility, and this is exactly what our topic is about, responsible fashion. So we cannot have this conversation without talking about EPR now that is mandated in Kenya. It is now with every single producer, and it's being pushed by the Kenya Association of Manufacturers and NEMA, and EPR is now mandated in Kenya. Now, they've not had any policies and legislation on textiles, but it is coming. We will be, I think, in full effect by 2026. Is our kind of like our window of what we're looking, going through the processes and getting it passed by law. It's already been passed through our Waste Management Act law, so it's coming. But to speak about Mitumba, especially our secondhand clothing and the dump, what we call dump fashion, is giving, what dump fashion has done is given a second life to fast fashion. So it's like faster fashion. So because now, instead of buying something for 50, if you buy it proper secondhand, and you can buy it at 10 shillings, 20 shillings. So even if you were not going to buy anything, now you're compelled, like, oh my God, it's only 50 shillings. With all the energy, and I can just pick it up. So it's it's gaining a second life. And then you also want to think about also what Ria was talking about, having sorting stations. Will we, as textile EPR task force, I am looking at taxing, if you're bringing in Mitumba that is polyester, that it's taxed at double compared to if you're going to be bringing in cotton, linen, and silk. These are things that we can are completely doable, and then use those taxes to create a total new industry of recycling the fabric, like what they're doing in Prato now, refluffing the fabrics and whatever. I have challenged, there's an importer of secondhand clothing from England, actually, and I actually challenged him today, and I told him, how about you only import natural fabrics? Don't bring in any polyester, and then be the lighthouse, be the poster child of how now we start doing the Mitumba business. And then with our people here challenging that at the port of entry, that there's a sorting station like they have in Dubai, in Italy, that there's a sorting station where you're sorting out these Mitumbas as they come in. So the ones that are destined for the dump sites just don't get to the dump site. We sort it at port of entry. It goes now directly to the recycler. And then grade A, grade B, and maybe grade C go into the Mitumba market, and D and E do not get into our consumer base. So I think that we have so much room to be able to do the right thing. We just lack the will and the core competencies to do it properly.
Is it the will? Do you think that we need policies involved? Do you think that we need government backing? Because, there's so much attached to how it starts from the port of entry. Everything right now is a wheeler and a dealer, and it's just about bringing in and suffocating the
but you can do this.
So,
you can also do this as private industry, right? When you can put up a sorting station. What stops you? You can be a PRO, a producer responsibility organization that sorts out at port, because you're responsible for end of life for producers anyway, right? So if we join with the EU legislation, the 13 legislations that have already come out, and they're all basically EPR. Yeah, the Green Deal is an EPR deal. So if you're already, now you link those two. So when they're coming, when those things, you say like, okay, the PRO will be a sorter at sort. Like,
I think government.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Michael, before you start,
Yes,
I'm going to
ahead.
have to jump off now. But I'm really looking forward to hearing your answer, actually, because I do think that there's a lot of policy conversations around this. And I feel like Zara will be the biggest voice to amplify that message. So I really look forward to tuning back in when I can, but I'm going to have to jump off now. But Linda, thank you so much for hosting this round. It's been such a pleasure to be on the table with every one of you. I think this is just such a fantastic initiative and program for us to have important conversations that are meaningful, and ultimately this is where change really starts. So thank you to everybody for being here. And thank you, Rhea. Me. Good to chat. We'll speak soon.
Bye.
Yeah, if I could pick up on Rhea's proposal to have a grading system, and then a comment about extended producer responsibility, and contrast that to government action. The grading system is an information tool. It's also perhaps something that could potentially support regulatory action. EPR to me looks more promising, because we're getting closer to dealing with production and less close to only focusing on end of life, that circularity argument we heard earlier that is so flawed. And government action can be positive, should be positive, but there are also risks to it. And particularly the recycling required to manage the plastic waste, the clothing made of synthetic materials, is a very costly proposition. And most of the proposals worldwide, also being considered in Kenya, are to put that investment on the back of the government, which governments can't afford it. It's simply beyond their means. If we invest billions of shillings into building the infrastructure needed to recycle waste at this level, we will only still capture a fraction of what's being produced. If, as currently as planned, we triple the production of plastics on the planet between now and 2060, if we are tripling the release of plastic pollution into the marine environment, increasing our recycling capacity by twofold, fourfold, sixfold, tenfold, that's not going to address the problem. We are going to have ever-mounting amounts of pollution that will be harming our environment, harming our health. And so putting the emphasis on waste management and recycling, I think, is the wrong end of the stick. We should start with design. We should start with the entrepreneurship that Kenyans and Africans embody, because they know their markets, they know their suppliers, they know their customers. The key word here we heard earlier from Rhea was community, or maybe it was from all of us. the communities that we build are the ones that will provide solutions for fashion and its regeneratability, its sustainability, its circularity, and its long-term health for the planet.
That's an interesting aspect to look at. Zara, what's your say?
Yeah, I thought like what Ria said was really, really interesting. I mean, I've thought about, okay, sorry, just so we can actually begin this conversation, I completely want to agree with everything that Michael said. Like, there are no real solutions that could really counter the kind of like waste crisis we're dealing with at the end of the day, where we're kind of in over our heads when it comes to production of everything, if I can be quite honest. But with that being said, I still feel like, that kind of the idea of circularity does provide quite an interesting and intriguing, thing. Because if we continue to, take in that waste, we have to deal with it in a certain way. My number one solution for that entire thing is that brands should be responsible for the waste that they create. It's beyond me why this isn't apparent to everyone, and kind of for me the most viable solution, because they are the ones. But I think why it's not is because they're not really able to trace, the production of their garments. There's not really enough transparency in their supply chains to allow them to understand how or what it would take to actually, kind of deal with the waste aspect of it. But yeah, secondly, I just I do agree with what Ria is saying. I think some type of grading system is needed. The situation on the ground is quite precarious, because a lot of the waste kind of management companies that are in Africa right now are saying that, that the community would not support a ban of secondhand clothing, which I find to be quite controversial, considering that the quality of their products has gone down almost more over 50% of the quality of their products is going down. They have much longer periods in which they have to keep pushing product that's really not moving because the quality isn't good. So I think that because their jobs are dependent on that, I think, they're biased to say that, they're happy to continue with business as it is. But I really and truly feel that if we don't kind of get a guideline system, and okay, so this is basically what I wanted to say. It's like, so in what happens to products in the West, so you buy from different brands. You buy from luxury brands, you kind of buy from mid brands, you kind of buy from low brands. If you buy from luxury brands, you're able to resell that product, whether it's through e-commerce, through kind of like a vintage wholesaler. You have options in what to do depending on how much you invested in your garment. Here we kind of have one linear model where it's like inexpensive clothing that's waste coming here and trying to be resold. So we have no system. We have no grading system. And to be quite honest, if you do go through and rummage through the kind of clothing that's coming in here, you're gonna kind of find brands all over the place. You might find a very, very, like luxury product that's very old, but it's still there. You kind of will find your fast fashion. You kind of even kind of will find these kind of made in China brands that are not really like none that we know of really. So there's this whole mix and jumble, and that's for me where I think my real issue is. It's because you're not really giving any like job satisfaction to the traders in this instance. You're kind of just dumping them with waste and expecting to sell it. And it's actually a very successful business model. Like people who are running the Mitumba um, organizations in Kenya are actually making it, it's $1 billion industry, Kenyan shilling.
Yeah.
It really is. I think everyone knows that. So um, that's kind of the whole kind of sad part about it. It's that if all people could be benefiting from it, then we can make the case for it, that it's a viable, kind of business model and like kind of linear way for us to, deal with the waste crisis. But now, because it's all kind of like being forced down our throats, and um, even for me, I don't find it exciting. There was a time where I would love to go to Toy and like kind of rummage through and find special pieces, and that's a very unique experience to me because, as I said, I'm an advocate, so I'm all about giving garments, a second life. Kind of let's do something with it, because I honestly think that as much as we're talking about this waste crisis, I would rather us have this kind of like kind of way to soften it, which is the secondhand market, as opposed to things directly going into landfill. That is really kind of where I'm like, okay, we need waste crisis solutions, but yeah, it
I
really
mean,
is.
if I can,
You
Yeah.
sorry,
know,
if I can interject and just a little bit, and you're right. I mean, so like we're all, I mean, I think we're all talking about the solution is really not in what, like how Michael was saying on the end, at the end of life. It is really to limit production. It is in this insane production processes that is really, causing the crisis. So if EPR should include production limits. So when you're looking at even anything, we're not only talking even textiles, like any production of lotions,
Exactly.
of
Yeah.
soap, of cans, of plastic cups, and whatever, limiting production.
It needs to be limited.
And I think we will start seeing the real impact of that, and then also that and then the consumerism, I mean, and that will also start to limit consumerism, and then investing in advertising extra consumerism. Do you remember, like, Linda, back in the day, I'm not trying to say you're the only old person here, but anyway, but back in the day
Older.
when they were when our advertisers advertising things used to be censored. So we should do a censorship on people who are saying buy one get one, buy two get three free, buy
100%.
one get one, like
yeah,
anything
that
of those
pushes
kind of
the fast
messages.
fashion agenda. Yeah.
I mean, we're literally. I
Exactly.
love that we're having this conversation during Black Friday is about to come on. So it is literally one of the things that infuriates me. It's like, but I think that, there's a part of me that looks at like this whole globalization thing where it's like for all of us to become increasingly dependent on certain people to produce an insane amount of, actually overproduce, because I don't even call that production. I call
Let
that
me
yeah, sorry.
go ahead. No, I was just
Yeah,
saying, let me plug this in here because this
yeah,
is what we do in Kenya. Right.
yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean 100%. And so I don't know. I really get quite conflicted when it comes to this kind of waste, the waste management, because we've become so dependent on buying things to make us feel good. But for me, it's like I love to talk about it with clothes because I'm like, people don't love their clothes. We're in such a weird place with the kind of relationships that we have with clothing. And yet I always kind of, fashion aside, and I'm a lover of fashion and I appreciate it. Clothes are things that it's a human need, not a want. We almost, or how it's supposed to be is that most people can really not survive without clothing. Yet we're accepting for our clothing to be produced in such, I don't know how to describe the way, like for us to get a t-shirt, for us to get a jacket, like the things that have to have gone on for that to happen. I kind of see it as inhumane. I definitely do see it as inhumane. I feel that, you know, marginalized people are being taken advantage of so we can have clothing that is also, you know, kind of having a detrimental effect to the environment. And I understand also that's probably why we don't love our clothes. You know,
Zara, but now we,
sorry,
Zara,
yes.
now I just feel like we need to talk. We already understand the problems, but now I'm just like, so what are the solutions? What is the end game? Because we could sit here and we could talk about all the fast issues that happen, but where do we go from here? What do we do from here? How does,
I
and
think
not to cut you short, but
yeah.
it's just like, okay, so do you know where we get tired of workshopping to workshop and talks for talks? Mine is right now, like my challenge to you and to Lisa and to Michael is, okay, so we're talking about responsible fashion. So what is our next step? What do we need to be adamant about to kind of seal a deal, you know? So Lisa started this, you know, you've already signed your partnerships for regenerative fashion, and this is really great. Regenerative fibers, sorry, let's go back, sorry. Before you hammer me, we're talking about what Michael is also doing on the other side, where he's saying, Linda, I need you to challenge. You know, when people say, oh, we're going to the beaches, we're picking up plastic and everything, it's like, it's not even about that. Let's get back to what you guys are using. I'm just asking, my question is, so what collaborations are needed, what partnerships are needed, and how do we emphasize this? How do we educate it? You know what I mean, Zara? So mine is like, okay, so let's get the gauntlet and let's just hammer down and just be like, boom, okay, time's up, let's go. This is what we're doing. Because otherwise we'll keep having these talks, and these are really beautiful, but if we don't show actionable stuff coming up in the near future, then what is the point of a roundtable talk if we're not going to action a couple of things? You know, if Lisa's not going to partner with you and you are not going to partner with Michael, Michael and Lisa are already to be connected. You need to be connected. Like, I'm the one on the side who's just like,
No, I agree because I feel like it's such a there's so much to talk about that's happening, but I just feel like even now I think like so in having this conversation, I think that's really a big step. I feel like someone in the comments just discovered Ria's brand, and like that really made me excited because I was like, this is happening. You know what I mean? I'm just like, I literally love to see that, like, just in having a conversation with like different people from like different perspectives allows people to like really kind of be like, oh, I really hadn't thought about that from that perspective. But I really think it is like, and one of the words that I wanted to use when I was talking about Ria's brand is really about focusing on decolonization. I think that we've come into a world where we've been taught to be hyper dependent on certain entities, and that is across the board. That's not just fashion. But I'm like, if we can start kind of challenging ourselves to, just choose different paths and kind of choose different alternatives. I think, this kind of thing is like a bit overused, but I'm a huge fan of buying made in Kenya. I literally, I can't stand by anything else because I really feel like the only way for us to kind of like, yeah, just break free of that is, to kind of go out and do things that kind of aren't, in the mainstream, that kind of are not, that are plugged out of that. And just experience, I think also with decolonization, my main thing is you really get to experience. I don't know how many people can tell us, kind of what kind of fibers are available in Kenya. You know what I mean? That are indigenous to Kenya. What kind of beading is indigenous.
Yeah,
I have
that bit. Yeah.
I have 2% power and I'm going to be off in 60 seconds. So I will recharge if I drop. But let me give quick answer to Linda's question. I think governments need to act, and I think they need to act at the global level. I think the Kenyan government is progressive in many ways when it comes to these issues, and that can be built upon. They were leaders in developing the Sustainable Development Goals, for example. I think youth can be mobilized, particularly young designers can learn about what is workable in this sphere, what is ethical, what is sustainable, what is circular. And I support things like the African Fashion Education Initiative. So I think that's where I would start. I would start with lobbying government and use government to use their power to convince industry to change their ways. And I would use youth as the future consumers as the springboard for change. I'm going to recharge my phone, so I'll be right back.
All right.
Yeah, and we
Thank you.
spoke about and you know, we always speak about the consumers having the ultimate power. So like Zara's work in advocacy is crucial in this thing. Like yeah, Michael is already working on a solution, right? Do
Right.
we all know about it? Whatever. I have a solution from the ground up where we're creating, developing regenerative fiber from indigenous plants. And for me, I only work in the arid, semi-arid, and very, lands that are extremely marginalized. So those communities are the poorest communities in Kenya. For me to have situated this thing in Kilifi, why? Because Kilifi has, I don't know if you know that there was a survey that went around and the poorest person in Kenya lives in Kilifi, right? So
Right.
for me, to be able to uplift that person from poverty by 10 times just in one growing season, it has already changed several generations, right? So
Yeah.
it is looking, when you look at holistic solutions like that, and I can't help it because I'm neurodivergent, so I see things, like in 5D. Yeah? So then you're able to get very easy, I see solutions very easily. And so now using that and manifesting that in this creation of this fiber that is based on ancestral knowledge, because the ancestors actually did do this when, going back, I told you, as you guys know, when the Portuguese came and burnt down our cotton and silk farms here in the Kilifi region especially. And they started having to make fabric from from their indigenous crops, which was millet, sorghum, sesame, flax, and stinging nettle, and then using baobab fiber for their, because also then the 1912 ban on hemp came around. So what were they going to use for sales? They started using baobab fiber. So there's all these things. So these have already been done by ancestors. We actually are doing them a disservice from not having advanced. 400 years later, we've done nothing with what they left us. So for me, it's bringing back the science to Africa, bringing back the science to our region, and being able to educate the youth into the science. Italy has the best textile machinery. Germany produces the best precision machines and microscopes and spectrometers. So being able to bring them here, have our people learn this, having our people re-engineer these machines for ourselves, and being able to produce textiles. We should be, as a nation, our plants are the most fibrous plants. There's no reason why the textile industry is not strong in Africa. We know that the textile industry is the one that brought about the Industrial Revolution. It will be our Industrial Revolution. It'll be a clean and green Industrial Revolution. So we don't get to use, at least we skipped the coal, we skipped the diesel. So we're able, our grid system is the most greenest grid system in the world. These are things that we need to celebrate as Kenyans. So even if we did production in Kenya, we're already a clean and green production. I think right now, I'm talking about when it was 85%, I hear right now we're at 95% renewable energy in our grid. So let us use these wins to create bigger wins and be able to use them as stepping stones to, bigger and greater places, but within the textile industry.
I really love that.
Yeah,
That's a
same.
really great way of looking at it. I'm just like, okay, yeah.
Can I
I feel like,
add something just with what
go
she
ahead.
said? Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
sure.
just that. So even what I love, I'm like, first, it's really that actualization of everyone's individual role to play. And like one of the things that I've really come to kind of understand this year on my journey, and this is kind of just my opinion, but I really kind of see it and actualize it, is that even so from a designer perspective, it is Kenyan designers' obligation to support these artisans, to support these systems, to enable them to grow. Because for me, it's like, again, it's like we're talking about Kenyan brands who are, and that's what I was saying with Ria's business. It's like if you want to start a business today, you're starting a business, you're going to your factory is sourcing materials from China or wherever else, India in the world, and then you're coming in being like, this is a made in Kenya brand. No, that
No,
one,
doesn't work.
no,
No, it
that one
doesn't.
doesn't work. It doesn't work for me. I'm
No.
like literally what Lisa is saying. The soil is Kenyan, the crop is Kenyan, the fibers are Kenyan, everything is that is what we are talking about when we're talking about the supply chain. And I really feel like I don't know why I've never had this clarity until this year, but I took a trip to Ghana that honestly kind of just everything awoken, like just woke in me, because I was just like, it really has to feel like also where, and it's through these fibers and through these stories kind of. And I've always had this thing of like the West and the East. What is it about the West with the African, with the embracing the culture? It's and that's what colonization basically was. It's that we've been so removed from our identity, where we
Mm.
had our way of dressing, where we had our religion, where we had all of these things that we were like our truth that we were living in, and we were removed from that, you know. And we wonder, and it actually, for me, with the entire creative industry, it really bothers me that everyone looks at it as like, oh, it's this thing that, you know, it's cute, but it doesn't really work. And I'm like, no, it works, but for it to work, we need to work, you know.
Yeah.
We need to actually like plug in where we can, you know, and kind of support, you know, what
No, you're
I feel like, you know,
Yeah, Zara, you're completely right. I mean, this
yeah,
colonial narrative, the colonial mindset, the capitalism mindset, capitalism requires
exactly,
consumerism, and it absolutely requires colonialism. That is
exactly,
the foundation of capitalism. So this thing of overproduction, overconsumerism, instead of looking at, and I've had this conversation recently multiple times, why are we looking at unique selling propositions? We need to look at unique value propositions and
basically,
placing the currency where the true value lies. The
literally,
value is in this indigenous, it's in regenerative things that are healing the earth, things that are not poisoning the soils, they're not poisoning the water, they're not
the
poisoning
things
our
our
body.
ancestors
That
were
is
doing,
the
we
value.
did it in the best way, yeah,
Exactly.
the
And that
things
does
that
not
our
mean
ancestors were
a lack
doing,
of growth for a brand,
yeah.
right? It does not mean lack of growth. You, instead of trying to grow by production, grow by quality.
Mhm.
So where you've been using polyester blend, how about you move it to a full silk or to full cotton or to full linen, right? And charge that.
Yes,
Add $10 to that instead of
yeah,
overproducing, so that
yeah,
your story, so that your value is in your story. People will pay for that. I will
yeah,
pay $20, $30 more,
yeah,
knowing that an entire community has been transformed by buying this one T-shirt,
exactly, yeah.
right?
And
So
I feel
let
like,
us place
yeah, we've
currency
been so
where
removed
the
from that
true value
local,
lies.
yeah, we've been so removed from that. Like local
Yeah.
supply chains is like such a myth these days. You know, like unless you're one of the superpowers, for you to have like a localized supply chain that's working, I think everyone looks at it and they're like, oh my God, like, how are you doing this? And I'm like, but it's very possible and it's very capable. And for me, I'm like, I don't think it's like a system that is really competing with these mass manufacturers. And but yet I still think it has the capacity to create something really unique and something, and as you're saying, like the value point of like, why is it that I should buy, you know, a Lilabare t-shirt over buying, I don't like to use fast fashion names, So I'm going to refrain. But yes, a Lilabare, a bare essential product as opposed to buying a fast fashion. Even if I'm buying the fast fashion secondhand, it's like, as Ria said, why should I put my money behind that 3,000 shilling product, And
Yeah, this is, oh, sorry, I know that she's frozen a little
putting
bit, but
yeah,
yeah.
putting my money in brands that I really believe in, like it really helps me sleep at night, It really does help me, kind of feel like all is kind of well in the world, if I'm able to really, kind of say that, I reject this kind of, mass manufacturing, consumerism going on. And I'm like, it's not for me.
No, but Zara, you even talked about, you touched on it lightly, but it's deeply important. Is that when you're shopping, and remember, that's not saying like there's a story behind every garment. So, like, let's say you do that, like all your apparel has stories, and that's what used to happen, right? Because we
Yeah,
used to shop only for special occasions. So,
exactly.
it's just like treating every garment that you're buying like your wedding dress or your
Exactly.
baptismal dress. So, imagine, so
Yeah.
like you will take care of it, you will mend it, you
Yes.
will you will never dump it, right?
Yes.
Right now we're buying fashion for the dump, like
Yeah.
disposable
For the
fashion, right?
throwaway culture. Yeah. For the
Yeah.
throwaway culture.
So
100%.
imagine if you're now buying things that you truly love. And I think that, yeah, like the capitalization has taught us not to buy things we love. But we've actually forgotten love. We've actually
Yeah.
forgotten that this is, do we
You
really
buy
like this? We don't
for the
care. Let's
gold.
buy three. Let's buy
Yeah.
three and then we'll figure it out somewhere. And then I'm not in the mood for it. So you have things in your closet that you've never even touched and they still have their labels on them?
You know?
So those are the kind of things. That's why consumer advocacy again is extremely important. And at
It
the other
is.
end, we're fighting EPR from the producer consumption,
Mhm.
the production end. So everybody needs to fight their battles. Me, I'm in the soil and with the roots. You are the guys fights the other battle.
Yeah. We'll
You know
try.
what?
We'll
I,
keep
I
I
think you
like to
guys need
say
to get
we're all in the business of fashion waste management because we're holding fashion waste in our closets, in our drawers, under our bed, at all
yes.
times. And anyone I ask, uh, how much of your clothing that you own do you actually wear? The answer is always, well, it's just a fraction. I stopped wearing that years ago. And, people on the one side have a relationship with their clothes, so they don't like to throw things away that they love. And that's the right sentiment. But on the other side, we don't need such consumption in order to have a good collection of clothes.
And there's
Absolutely.
another thing in managing production, Mike, and I think that's what kind of like the space you come from as well. And so when I decided to come back into fashion because I was okay, thank God I was not involved in fast fashion, but I actually worked for Eileen Fisher, as you know, is a total regenerative fashion pioneer. Actually, I think at that time she was the only um, designer who worked with smallholder farmers and small communities around the world to source all her fabric. And it was a pleasure to work with her in the 90s and see her processes and the length that she go for just natural dyes, for natural fabric, for things that are easily washable, that did not bleed, that do whatever. So I saw that painful process. I worked for product development for Giorgio Armani for a significant amount of time as well, and also in the retail management aspect of it. So to see the full circle come around with Mr. Armani being the first signer and originator of the Manifesto for Regenerative Fashion, being able to visit his farm, which is the first regenerative cotton farm in the world, and he's doing it with agroforestry, is amazing for all this to just come around like that. So and what you said, especially about our Gen Zs, they have such a consciousness, not only of climate change, of regenerative fashion, of conscious fashion, of ethical fashion, and especially Kenyans, to see for the first time an entire generation where you cannot tell the rich from the poor, because they have this new sense of fashion that is is cross sectional on every level. It's androgynous. It is classless. It is genderless. is so refreshing, but and it's also at the same time uniquely African. I know that fashion is in good hands, and that is why I have so much energy for this, because my generation is the last to educate. If we do not make the difference in policy and legislation, and if we do not make changes in production, because they cannot do production, they're not at that level yet, they're too young. If we do not make those investments, we screw them up. I gave birth to 4 Gen Zs and 1 millennial, so I'm obligated to them, and to see the next generation flourish healthily and wealthily.
I think that's actually it's the truth. It bears the truth, because if we don't change it, and because you're also part of an amazing space. Sorry, I'm about to cough, so somebody just take it away. Hold on one second. Oh gosh.
Yeah, I think Mike, you want to say something?
I'm still absorbing the 4 gens that you created. Thank you for that.
Yes, Zara.
No, I was just about to say that as we wrap up, I think we need to task ourselves, because you mentioned something, and you sit on a beautiful board with the Fashion Council. You have so many passionate people.
Oh yeah, I
around
forgot
you.
that part.
I mean, I feel legislation and changing of policies for is it 3 Gen Zs and 1 millennial, or vice
Four,
way
please.
around?
Why are we forgetting children? Yeah, 4.
I know.
4
Gosh,
Gen
gosh,
Zs
gosh.
and 1 millennium.
There you go. I'm just thinking that we have to put ourselves to task, and I feel like I don't know, there's a different conversation that I hope. I don't know, Michael, would you be able to make it out here in March for the Diani edition?
No, I'm not traveling this year. I'm taking the year off of air travel. It's part of my carbon budget.
Oh, that's a good excuse. I need to be using that one. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Well done.
I use that excuse. I could use others, but that one seems to be one I can be proud of. No, but I did excessive travel at the very end of my 20 years with United Nations. I went to 3 continents in 8 weeks, and I really felt bad. I shouldn't be ending on such a low note as being a habitual jet setter, and I'm not a jet setter. I'm a cyclist, and my hobby is to walk in nature. So no, thanks for the invitation. I'm always available virtually. Virtual Michael is really almost as good as a real Michael.
I like that. Well, we'll make sure that virtual Michael exists during that time. Well, be it a pre-recorded session of what you think and your thoughts are, because God knows that my internet, whenever I try and connect people virtually and when we're live in person, yeah, we're good. We've learned our lessons. But I really want to find out, what are your last words? What kind of collaborations do you think that we should be aiming at? And because we'll close out in the next 5 minutes, but what kind of collaborations are we looking at to start impacting? We're talking about the bans, we're talking about grading systems, we're talking about there's so many facets that you guys have spoken about. I want to know, Zara, what is high of your most important? And I want to say, throw out your wish list, 2 of them. Same as you, Lisa, and same as you, Michael. I feel like a wish list is always really great, because then we get to look for them and say, hey, I want to connect you guys, because I like to do that. I'll start with you, Michael.
All right. I think we underappreciate Africa's role in the global sphere. Africa is the font of creativity. And people may not know this, but the creative economy, the export value of Africa's creativity, is the 2nd largest sector in the continent. It's after agricultural exports. And that includes fashion, it includes design, it includes music, and other sectors where creative inputs are really driving the 21st century economy. And so what I would like to see is more attention given to how to boost Africa's creative sectors, including the fashion industry, support young designers, support local producers, support the culture that is really generating the value for not only Africa, but for the globe. And the partnerships I'd like to see there are partnerships that marry economics with creativity.
I like that. Lisa?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like for me again, a little bit of echoing about our continent. Not only is it the least polluted continent in the world, it also is home to the largest carbon sink. So just given those two statuses, we are our continent is an authority in sustainability and regeneration. Um, then on top of that, let's talk about now the creative sector, the creative economy, and what textiles can do across the board. When we look at, I belong to certain big Africanist movements. I don't say Pan-Africanist because once you say Pan, you recognize borders, but as an Africanist, you see the continent as one. We know that the best cotton growing areas are in West Africa, the top growing areas of cotton, the best quality cottons in the world. Why are we struggling to grow the worst cotton in the world in Kenya when we can get it out of Ethiopia, out of West Africa, right? Why are we struggling to grow flax out of wherever else when South Africa grows some of the best flax? You understand? So we can do production within the continent, and as you know, in our conversations with the core, we've been able to get FedEx and talk about the African Free Trade Agreement and be able to get trade barriers down and whatever. So we need to also think about that creative-wise and how we can maximize ourselves as a continent to be able to optimize our production, our creativity, our quality. That Made in Africa is a brand that would have a name, you know? It's a brand to be reckoned with.
I love that. Yeah. Zara?
Yeah, I think what both Michael and Lisa have said is really great, honestly. Um, yeah, I definitely would love to see more interconnectedness within the continent, 100%. And that's, I think, through the supply chain, like obviously we talked about from the Made in Kenya perspective, but I really feel like, kind of as Michael said, it's like there's a huge opportunity, to really kind of, I want to use the word extract, but in a positive manner, kind of extract kind of like the potential and the capacity, of our fibers, our artisans, all key stakeholders involved really across the board. And yeah, I really look forward to it. I'm hoping it's going to happen in my lifetime.
Sorry, I just.
I
Oh,
think,
sorry.
go
I was just
ahead.
going to say, sorry, I forgot to say that, no, to even answer your question, which I did not, which is, I mean, ReFace is about collaborations across the entire value chain, right?
Exactly.
So from the soil, from the smallholder farmers all the way to consumers, to producers, to academics, to scientists, and then to the recyclers, the upcyclers, and the composters, right? So that
Yeah.
everything is for healing the earth. And yeah, so it's collaborations across the value chain.
Exactly. And I really do feel like we have the capacity to do it, I think that our ancestors really like wrote the playbook on that one. So I just think that we have to be, at some point, we have to kind of, allow them to guide us on, what are the best practices and, what are the best ways to kind of, and for me, I'm like, I just don't see it kind of as a correct, yeah, as a sort of correcting or kind of like just kind of, just reimagining what we really like feel. Like when I got into fashion, I always say that I was just so like everything was amazing, and it was, until you realize there was a really dark cloud, hanging over the industry as a
But we're
whole.
now here.
Yeah,
But we're
and then,
now here to action it.
we're really here to just like kind of turn that page and just, I guess, kind of also bridge the gap in telling those stories as well, because I think that for me is also where like I really feel, in the next 100 years we can really make a difference in like documenting and just kind of, I think also what I love today is like all of us really giving like Ria her flowers. I think like she is someone who is very deserving of that. Just this is more for everyone who's listening in. I just for that perspective of like, so I recently attended Sunny Dolat's exhibition about fashioning a nation. If anyone is familiar with it or not, it was in collaboration with the Goethe Institute, and Sunny is asking for Kenyan people to submit images um, of kind of the past of their parents, their grandparents, because we're kind of trying to figure out our identity as a nation. And what came up in that is he kind of brought up a few Kenyan brands that I had personally never had heard about, and kind of also really gave them their flowers to kind of be like, so these are the people who are like, embracing, Kenyan fashion. And this is kind of setting the stage for all of that. And it just reminded me that like, I think business can be precarious, but when you see Kenyan brands really attempting to do things, I would really encourage people to go out and support them. I think I think the support doesn't only have to be financial. So I would really encourage everyone to kind of, explore. And I mean, I have a huge list of Kenyan brands that I love and adore. And I'm happy to share with anyone who is interested. So yeah, let's keep discovering Kenyan fashion and keep trying to make sustainable decisions. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you. I'm hearing marrying economies and creativity, production in the continent, that work within our intra-Africa trade and the free trade agreements that have been written. I'm hearing about the interconnections within the supply chain and extracting potential within our capacity building, and as well as supporting local Kenyan designers. I really love everything that you guys have basically echoed, and I feel we're definitely going to have a part 2 of this, see if we can get some of these homegrown people. But I feel like even with Sunny Dola talking about some of those Kenyan brands, some of them are like, and who I absolutely love is like Shiko Onyango, who I love how she is just Africa to the world, and she likes to tell the stories. She's really about from the root, as the Americans would say, from the rooter to the tutor. She just really wants everybody to really understand and reimagine what traditional life versus what our current life and what our state in fashion looks like. So anyway, I really want to say thank you to all of you. I want to say thank you to Ria for, she's going to hear this. So thank you so much for being a part of this. And I think that you're doing a fantastic job, and you're setting the standards of what responsible fashion looks like. Michael, I want to say thank you again for giving me the opportunity of and gracing us with your presence here. You've been so stellar and so supportive of the Kenya fashion industry, and I want to say the global fashion industry at that. But I really want to keep encouraging you to just keep pushing us guys and giving us like, ideas of how we could branch out, and how we could, are there people that we could partner with, that we could collaborate with, that that Zara would actually do really well with, that Lisa would do really well with. We look for the opportunities. It's not that we all have them all in mind, but we're always looking for the opportunities to reach out, and hopefully 2025 becomes that. And I want to thank you, Zara, for being so passionate. Oh my gosh, your information, your source is, I'm like, oh my gosh, you're so passionate about it, and I really love it. And beautifully, you're so young, which means that you can make an impact. So when you say you don't know if you could see it in this lifetime, I'm like, yeah, you could, absolutely. And it's just about
Putting
like
it
now,
out there. Yeah,
exactly.
it's my wish
And
list actually. Yeah, it's
I
my
love
wish
that.
Yeah.
Lisa, thank you so very much for always being a part of the Roundtable Talks. We know we've got so much work that we're going to be doing even into 2025. There's so many collaborations that are coming up, and I'm just really looking forward to what we have to offer. The year has not stopped. We celebrate our collaborations and our achievements since July to November, and what we want to plan and what we want to achieve in 2025. So December, we have a celebration of all these partnerships. And so I want to thank everybody who has been part of this. Diambo Latoya, Zara, I saw Linda, I saw Afman. I want to say thank you to everybody from FedEx. Ruth Kabogo was also online, to the Paystack team, to the New Faces, New Voices from the Grass and Michelle Foundation. I want to say thank you so much for supporting us. From About Time, I feel like the most chatty person who's been here, for me, hands down, and who deserves dinner for two. I don't know, would you agree with me, would be Latoya, because she has commented, it has just streamed through, and she has just been commenting, and I don't know who else would better deserve that dinner for two at About Time. So I will give your details and your information, and I hope you enjoy having some really beautiful, sustainable, you'll be in a beautiful environment that you will enjoy anyway. But thank you so much to About Time for also giving us that opportunity of feeding and nourishing and sustaining our souls. So thank you guys. I really do appreciate you. I have to go back into this because I have to appreciate the people who have sponsored and supported and partnered with the Core Fashion Kenya Roundtable Talks, and obviously it being supported by Into the Core podcast.
Into the core.
Get into it.
All good things in Africa and beyond. Into the core. All good things in Africa and beyond.
That's what it is. All good things in Africa and beyond. Thank you so much, Michael, Zara,
Thank you.
Lisa, Ria. Thank you guys. God bless you. And thank you for a beautiful, informative session.
Yeah.
Ciao, ciao. Thank you guys for listening in.
Bye. Thanks. Good night.